The one where Rachel goes back to work is the 11th episode of season 9 of Friends. This is directed by Gary Halvorson, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And I've just pulled up my notes, and I don't have much to say. That's not to say I didn't enjoy the episode. I certainly do like this one. There's not much to say, although with Rachel, I do think there are some important points raised, and I'll talk about those as we go through them. So I'll talk about Phoebe first, and then Monica and Chandler, and then Rachel. Phoebe is short on cash, so Joey helps her get an extras job, and she starts off as an extra as a nurse, and she's so nervous. The tray is clattering, and she has to do this several times. It could have become stale, but I think they did it the perfect amount, and her delight when she got it right, I thought, was fabulous. And then she's the extra in a restaurant scene, and she's a waitress, and she ends up hitting Joey because, well, she gave her character a backstory where she's having to take on an extra job as a waitress after she's done her shift as a nurse, and Joey is not providing as he should be, or his character, and just the way she walks out and hits him must have been so confusing for everybody there, and I thought it was absolutely fabulous. And we actually end the episode with Phoebe causing more problems on set. So I enjoyed it. It's nice padding to bulk out the main narratives, and I thought it was really good fun. We then come to Monica and Chandler. And of course, we learned in the previous episode that Chandler quit his job because he's sick of being away most of the time. And he understandably says that it's overwhelming being unemployed, looking for work. Absolutely the case. Monica's very excited because she gets to do some organising, and she puts all of this paperwork together, and they're going to go through everything alphabetically. A is for advertising. That sounds appealing to Chandler. I would like to have seen what other jobs Monica had come up with, but Chandler hears it immediately. It's something he's interested in, and he starts to give all of these really corny slogans that are so fun. Matthew Perry's delivery of all of the slogans I rather thoroughly enjoyed, and he gets offered a position as an unpaid intern. Now, I'm not completely against unpaid internships if somebody is still at school and they are very brief. For example, doing a week's work experience at a publishing company, that's something that would have interested me. That's the first thing that came to my head. Or, I guess, in Chandler's case, doing a week's interning at an advertising agency while you're still at high school, I don't think is a big deal. But once you're an adult, I feel like it's disrespectful to offer it unpaid. Maybe one day shadowing the company or somebody at the company to see if you enjoy the environment. I feel like that would be too complex from a legal perspective for the company. But the point there is that I don't think unpaid internships are terrible if somebody is, well, not old enough to actually work yet, and it's just work experience. But when they're adults, I think it's really insulting, and I don't think it should be a thing. And Chandler is realising that it's going to be a long time before he's earning the money that he was, which is completely fair. I don't think he should automatically jump in with the same salary and at the same level, managing people. But at the same time, unpaid interns, it's taking it to the opposite extreme, and I don't think that's acceptable. But certainly Chandler realises that it's going to be a long road, and I think that is quite a sensible approach and very believable as well. But it does question the future for Monica and Chandler because they've been talking about having a baby, and now Chandler realises that this might not be the best time. So will they have their children? Will they go on to start a family now? Or will they have to wait? Well, of course, I'm not going to say. But I would imagine that at this point, when this first aired, it would be quite unpredictable. And I think they did a really good job with keeping things up in the air, and I thought it was very well handled. So a nice part of the narrative. It's nice to get the next step forward for Chandler. And then we come to Rachel, which really addresses some important points. With me being in the UK, I don't think it's quite as impactful, but I would imagine if you're in the States, it really would be. Rachel and Ross are taking Emma to Rachel's work to show her off, and when they get there, they meet Gavin Mitchell. Gavin is played by Dermot Mulroney, and he's been doing Rachel's job while she's been away. Maternity cover, absolutely normal, no problems there. But he's very much encroaching on Rachel's job in a way that seems like he's going to take over. And Rachel panics. And instead of coming back in 2 weeks, she's going back to work now. And from what I believe, this is a genuine fear that somebody could have. Definitely in the UK to some extent, but we have better maternity cover policies here. But from what I hear in the States, not everywhere offers maternity leave. They're not required to offer reliable maternity cover where you're guaranteed a job coming back. Correct me if I'm wrong, and it could be different state to state, but I can see this being a real concern for a lot of people, and I think the show does a really brilliant job of highlighting it. Do I like the fact that they let Rachel come back 2 weeks early? Not necessarily, because that's showing that she felt like she had to do that, so she did that. There was no reassurance that it was fine for her to take those 2 weeks. She didn't have to rush back to work. The show was kind of saying, well, if you have this concern, just go back to work and make it work, which is the conversation she had with Ross. They were just going to have to make it work because they didn't have a nanny. So I do really applaud the show for highlighting that this is a real concern. But the show also basically said, if you're concerned, go back to work, find childcare, make it work. So the concern was there. I don't agree with the resolution. But we do get to see a softer side of Gavin. He was quite abrasive. But when Rachel was panicking that she had to do a presentation, but there was nobody to watch Emma, Gavin agreed to watch Emma so Rachel could do the presentation, which I thought was really, really sweet. I don't think Rachel should have done the presentation because, well, Gavin did most of the work. He'd been working on it. Then she just comes in and takes over the presentation. I think Gavin still should get credit where it's due because he was employed to do this job, to do maternity cover. He should get credit for the work. Unless he didn't want to do the presentation, in which case, fair enough. But at the same time, I just don't think anything about this was handled very well. But at the same time, it's addressing such an important topic that I think it deserves a lot of praise. Nobody should go on maternity leave and fear that they're not going to have a job to come back to. Obviously, if the company shuts down in that time period, that's a different story. But nobody should go on maternity leave or paternity leave feeling like somebody is going to take over their job and they're going to lose their job. Again, in the UK, we have much better protection for that. But it could certainly still be a concern here, and I do think that the topic is always worth talking about, and where protection isn't there, I think there needs to be more. Companies need to do more to ensure that people can have a baby without losing their job because of it, because that's effectively what would happen. You go on maternity leave and come back and somebody's taking your job because you decided to have a child. So it does a good job of highlighting that this is a genuine concern, a genuine issue, but they resolved this issue by Rachel going back to work 2 weeks early. So I didn't love that. But again, it gets credit for at least tackling the subject, even if it didn't do it in a way that I think was the most beneficial or the most helpful. But nevertheless, it's still interesting and it's still a decent part of the episode. Could be better, but I applaud them for at least addressing it and raising awareness that this is a concern that some people might have. In all, the one where Rachel goes back to work is a decent episode. Personal highlights would be, I guess, Phoebe, everything with Phoebe, and Chandler taking the next step on his latest career journey. And in general, it's still a solid episode. I don't think they handled everything as well as they could have done. But other than that, I don't have any real complaints. It's still a good experience.